record on this computer. Great. All right, we're recording. I just want to welcome you to class 2. I just had a wonderful conversation with one of my guests here today, Bridget, and if you come on as we're talking, please let me know you're here. I will see you if you come up on a screen. We're in part 2 of my free training, and the first was last class, if you missed it, was on portion control. And this is really laying a groundwork for, am I hungry? Am I full? And I taught the hunger scale. I'm not going to go back into that today, but what's really cool is if we marry the hunger scale work and eating slow with another tool I'm going to teach you today, we can create, they are two of the most important tools in terms of a foundation of intuitive eating. So it is just a beautiful way when we eat between light hunger and light fullness. It's easier to eat when we're, stop when we're full. So that really prevents some of our natural overeating when we eat when we're too hungry. But it really is the first step in listening to what your body's saying about food. And again, it's not about eating to what someone says or the clock. It's about in our head, making these decisions around, it's 2 o'clock, I should eat. I haven't eaten, even if you're not hungry. I'm in a meal with a bunch of friends, I should eat. It's like, no, not if you're not hungry. So what I'm going to share today is fuel testing. This is one of my favorite tools. This is something that grew I had no idea. I always ate to points, calories, and what people were telling me. But during my maintenance journey of losing weight, I really learned, I bucked the system. I found myself saying, oh, that food was so good. I ate it a lot. And I know that I feel better eating it, even though it's like 5 points for a dinner when I was on like 18 points a day. And I'd be like, but I never needed to eat the rest of the evening. So I was learning by bucking the points, the calories, that I like some of the denser calories, and I honored that and put those into my diet. Like, I thought I couldn't have peanut butter because it's very potent in calories. It has a lot of fat in it. But I find when I have coffee in the morning and then even just peanut butter and a banana or peanut butter on whole wheat toast, I'm in heaven. I don't really need to eat for a very long period of time. So that is the essence of fuel testing. It's moving just like we do with the hunger scale. Am I hungry? Am I full? Now, how is my body reacting to fuel? So if it's all in your head, we would eat to the lowest calories. We would eat what everybody else is telling us, and we would not be honoring our own body's need. And I think there is a fingerprint of how each of us has a fuel list. Like, I think there is a general nutritional advice is really good, and that's where we do use a little bit of our head. We really kind of know what's going in our bodies, but then we use our body's feedback to decide, is this for me? Because there's a lot of things on a really healthy food list that don't work with some of us. And that's where, I had a gal questioning fruit. And she was working in a high-intensity aerobic class in the morning and was worried that eating fruit, even though it felt amazing to have this fresh mango after she worked out, it was like what she craved after she worked out. She was talking herself out of it. And then we did the fuel test exercise, and she's like, this is for me. Like, this really works. All right, I want to make some notes because there's something else that, and I want you to know I did a podcast. I just recorded it. It's coming out in a couple weeks. On this. So I'm going deeper, and I'm echoing what I'm doing right now is really grounding out my program in terms of weight loss. And then I'm going to grind out my mindset work, working towards confidence. And both of those series are going to show up in the podcast, and they just might show up. They're showing up a little bit in this training. All right. So Bridget, do you have how do you decide if you feel like sharing, and I can share some of my examples, how do you decide the what to eat? What goes on for you in those moments?
Well, much like you, I have been a yo-yo dieter, and so I have focused a lot on following what others had to say. I too was in Weight Watchers 3 times.
Yeah.
That goes with that. So most of the time, honestly, I know now after having done that 3 times the portion. And so this is a complete mind shift, this idea of am I hungry, am I full? Because I normally just say, these are the points I'm allotting for this meal, this is what I'm eating.
Yeah. Yeah. Very different, right? And yet I know that the laying the groundwork for me as a big overeater, that it actually Weight Watchers, because I don't want to dish any program. There's so many avenues to learning about what works for us. And Weight Watchers for me really did help me understand how much food I needed. But it's fascinating, when I got to my maintenance journey and got very active as a Weight Watcher leader, I was loading boxes. I was carrying things in and out to meetings. I had one of the busiest meetings in the city of Atlanta. I had 71 people. So setting up enough product for that meeting and getting the room ready and getting my staff ready. And oh my gosh, I was on my feet that day. On Wednesdays, I was on my feet from 10 in the morning until probably 10:30 at night. And I'll tell you, I was dropping weight. I was scared. For the very first time in my life, I thought I was losing weight because maybe I had cancer or something. I'm not kidding. Because I was eating to my points, and I didn't understand why I was eating maintenance points. I didn't understand why I was losing weight. Well, I was really getting active, and that was new. And it was fascinating to me that it was like, oh my God, I'm actually under eating now on Weight Watchers. So like for me, it did get me to a moderation. It got me to understanding my appetite. I really took in the meeting that said, like, really, are you hungry when you eat? And I was like, what? I would never ask those questions before. I always ate ahead of my appetite. So this coupled with then now listening to the feedback of the what, not by points, not by any other measure, but learning what your fuel is. So again, it's moving from our head. There's good information out there. There's great programs, really good. Like we really want to know what we're putting in our body, but now it's seeing what happens in our body. I'm going to use blue this time. So there's 3 questions. 2, 3. All right. So there's 3 questions. And can you see me, Bridget? Or are you just hearing?
I'm seeing you.
Okay, good. So you get to see me. I just want to know how much, like when everybody watches the video, obviously they're going to have the video, but I wanted to know if you're seeing me, if I need to be more distinct in my language to make sure you get what I'm writing down, right? Okay, so see, if you're the only one that shows up to a class, I just want to tell you, you get your private class and you all are going to benefit from this today. Yay, Bridget, for showing up. All right, so when we've eaten a food, I don't care what it is. I want you to test everything in the world. In my podcast, I even share, I tested this with sugar and flour. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Let me make a note. Sugar and flour. All right, all the things. So the first one is, do I have good energy after I eat this food? So after we eat a food that is fuel for us, we should feel light and energetic after it. Now, there are foods that when we're following the hunger scale, I had this happen with a client, that as she ate something at a meal and she started telling me, it's like, oh my God, I must have overeaten. Now I'm always overeating. She had this whole shame story about overeating, and I backed her up. We talked about it, and she said, oh, wait, I don't think I really ate that much. I ate barbecue. And she goes, oh my gosh, this is the second time I've eaten pork like that. The really fatty side. Barbecue can be kind of pretty good for you, but this was the very fatty version, dripping in grease. And for her, animal fat was triggering this in her stomach. And she realized it was the food that she ate that made her feel so full. So when we have dramatic responses to food, tiredness, bloated, really hungry an hour later, any dramatic responses right away, that is not fuel. Like when they're negative, bad responses, we don't feel good after we eat something, there's something in that meal that did not work for you. And I'm going to talk about how to feather this out later. So good energy is one of the caveats. The second one, and if to be a fuel for you, it needs to fill all 3. Good energy after you eat. Does it sustain you for 2 to 3 hours? So does this food last? Does it work for you? Now, when I eat, oatmeal is a great food. It works for my husband. He actually can eat a lot more calories than I can. Like, he is a machine in terms of metabolism. But when I went on the oatmeal bandwagon with him, and I will tell you that I'm hungry in an hour. I don't care how I prepare it. It does not work for me. Now, for some people it does. So I'm never going to be that coach that says you can only eat one, like this is your plan of diet, because that does not work. We can start with some core things, but that does not work. So is it a food that lasts 2 to 3 hours? I'll tell you my favorite new breakfast, and is when I've got access to it, especially when I'm really hungry. I am really like, this would be my brunch lunch meal. Egg whites, bacon, avocado. I'll never be, maybe some fruit if I'm really still ravenous during the meal, or fruit will be probably a snack later in the day. I am not hungry for 4 to 5 hours. I love it. So I eat at 10. I have a very small snack in the afternoon, and then I have a really amazing green leafy dinner with some protein. And this really, really works. So I am learning that there's some foods that, like bacon. Yes, the wellness coach eats bacon. And not all days am I that hungry, but that is really working for me. So lean proteins for me work, a lot of leafy greens. I don't want to call it overeating, but I eat a lot of bulk of green. So for me, and there's some people that can't tolerate that much fiber. So see how we're all different. That's what I've tested all this. That's what works for me. Last but not least, we can stop, and that's why I started with the other tool first. If it's fuel for you, you can stop easily at +2. And this is like bringing back Weight Watchers. When you're really hungry, an apple will work, right? And so potato chips, I can't stop at +2. But I'm not going to overeat an apple for sure. I just won't. Like that, it's just like our fuel foods are foods that aren't something they're like, oh my God, I can't wait to have 17 more bites. And it's not that you don't have those opportunities, enjoy eating and other ways of treating yourself. But this is the fuel testing. Bridget, what questions do you have?
Well, okay, so I discovered last night that pizza is definitely not a fuel.
Isn't that fascinating? Okay, so tell me why pizza is not a fuel.
Well, because I don't, same with the chip example you just provided.
Pardon? I'm sorry?
It's the same as the chip example that you provided.
Yep, can't stop. Okay, so I have another story. I literally thought something was wrong with me because I could never stop eating pizza. I really thought something was wrong. I had this whole story around it. It was my trigger food. It was something that I always overate when my husband was out of town and I was like a little lonely. I would eat, and I would only have this much, and I rarely had leftovers when I had a pizza in front of me. It wasn't fuel. I could not stop at +2. Now, I still eat pizza, the thinnest crust in the world, and I load it with, I'm a protein eater, I'm a carnivore, but I will load it with protein, and guess what? It becomes more like fuel. If that's the only thing to choose, I actually load it up so that I get some help, like some animal, like get some fat in there, and then I can have a slice and a big salad, and it works. Isn't that fascinating?
I think that's really good. And I mean, I think where I'm at is it's hard to use the good energy or to sustain 2 or 3 hours, which I know why that is, but that's another story. But I think for right now, this is going to be the question that helps me.
Yes. And so I changed, I didn't even realize this till I started podcasting. Isn't that fun? When I was telling my stories and talking about things that that I was shaming myself for my behavior around pizza, and it was total biology. It was total, my body was going, nope, that wasn't enough. Nope, there was no nutrition in there. Nope, that wasn't sated. And I finally dropped my, I can't control myself around pizza. I can't control myself around chips. Let's just look at the biology that's going on here and know that, yeah, that's not fuel for me. That would be one place that I would deliberately portion control. If I'm going to have some, I have to put the bag away because it's not fuel. I'll want to just keep eating and eating and eating. Now, when I work with clients, and this is for everybody out there, this is the work of understanding where we do work of like, why am I choosing the chips? Like there are times that I am about to record my podcast. I get a little nervous. Like, is this going to go right? Am I going to have to redo it? Am I going to be late? All that kind of drama. And I will literally start going to the pantry and munching on whatever. I'll choose a good chip. It's a corn chip. It's not that, but it's below me. I am going and choosing that food to feel better emotionally. So that's an emotional eat, not a fuel eat, right? Right? Okay. Any other questions on the testing? So you're going to test the stopping at fullness this week, yeah?
Yeah, I think where I'm at using the other two, because right now I'm using coffee to manage my energy, so that
yes.
Good.
Yeah, so get to here, make sure you're getting, I do like layering these efforts, because cold turkey that's not the way I work, but you do you. But if you focus on this tool for a while and find that you're not getting sleepy after you're eating certain foods, then it might be easier to start tapering your coffee. So, or getting sleep, and that's a whole other class, right? All right, so what, hon?
One thing at a time.
Yes, absolutely. And I teach this all the time. I just got off the phone with a client, and she has, like I did, a history of the yo-yo dieting, and really like she almost was getting to the point, well, I wonder if I'm genetically just wired to overeat. No, we're not. It's not a life sentence. It is not. Our brain likes pattern, and if we developed a pattern where we feel better when we eat more food, that will feel like it's genetic. It's not true. It's not true. I want to share just one more, like how my field testing went. I discovered this work after I lost my weight. I had some hunches about fuel for me, like bucking. There's just times when I buck the system. I wasn't doing points anymore, and I was like, I don't care if I'm over my points. I know that chicken or whatever I was choosing, chicken sausage or something was working. But there's this other level. I was a runner for quite a while. My back went out. I cannot run anymore. I miss it. But I literally would do 10K races, like 6 miles on a Saturday, and go to brunch, and didn't understand why I was having these thirst attacks after, and just dog tired. Like I would walk in the house, not 20 minutes after having brunch, and need a nap. I was like, what is going on? So I didn't think it was the food. I thought it was a race recovery. I must be running differently than my trainings, da-da-da-da-da. So this process of elimination took me a while. So I ran a few more races. I did my brunch meal, and I realized it was the food, because on one of my training days, I had a turkey sandwich, and I didn't need a nap. It's like, what's happening? So I went from there and started testing the brunch meal. At first, of course, I thought the bad news, it was grits in the toast. So drop the grits in the toast. Next, I thought that didn't work. Next, I thought it was the cheese. Nope, I didn't drop that. Well, guess what? It was, of course, I was having eggs Benedict. Think about the egg yolk. Just think about that for a minute. So there was no other time that I eat that many egg yolks, ever. I don't have hollandaise as a regular food. It is not a fuel for me, but it was a joy eat. And on those brunches, I was eating a lot of egg yolk. Think about the egg yolk and butter. So I realized it was the egg yolk. And I ate an omelet the next time with all the fun sides, because you need a lot of food after you've run a race. And I had dropped the egg white omelet, and I felt amazing. I was like, wow, that is my fuel story. So there can be combinations of foods. You do not have to do an elimination diet to do this. But it can be tricky sometimes of figuring out what the food is. So if you're getting extremely tired, Bridget, this would be something for you to watch. If there's some meals that you're getting very tired after it, then I would really look at the foods and start isolating it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, any questions so far? Okay, so I'm going to talk about combining the two, because this whole class is really to help people lay the groundwork for weight loss. And what happens, and I'm going to describe some ways of eating and go a little deeper, and I'm going to put 80. If you want to create weight loss so that you're at your natural weight, and this is for people, like if you want to stay at your natural weight but be eating really well, The hunger scale is not just for dieting. The hunger scale is to honor when you're really stressed out, to really make sure you're still fueling. And your body will not overeat. Your body will tell you when it's full. And if you don't need to lose weight, you'll be eating more than the person next to you that needs to drop some weight. I even notice I'm carrying some extra weight right now that I'm a little uncomfortable, and I'm really noticing that I'm just not hungry very often. Dang, right? Because I'm not really operating at my natural weight. So what's happening for me is I'm titrating, I'm really leaning up, I'm looking at my fuel, and I'm really practicing the tools. That's why I love teaching what I'm doing. As I'm doing it, this really works for me. I have no drama around food anymore. I really don't. But these tools work. And they work when we get to about an 8. If you look at your whole week, are you eating 80% what is fuel for you? So as you're testing, making that list, like taking out some foods that are triggers, taking out the pizza, it's not fuel, eating 80% fuel, and then following the hunger scale, eating between the 2s creates weight loss. It helps our body to drop weight. Now, losing weight is different than maintaining. I can be pretty loosey-goosey. I've learned these tools. They're really part of my life. I don't overeat anymore. It's not comfortable for me. So I maintain my weight pretty easily. But if I want to create weight loss, I just have to pay more attention. It's not harsh. It's just paying more attention. It's honoring my hunger just as much as I'm honoring my fullness. Do you have any questions about that? And I'm going to teach the 4 types of eating, and then our class will be done. Bridget, do you have any questions there? Anything at all?
The only thing I would say is, and we discussed before the call, that I listened to a lot of the podcasts, and in one of them you had made a mention of, hey, you are able to do this even through perimenopause.
Yes,
and
menopause.
So, that's where I'm at. I'm in that, phase before the pause, I guess.
Which is off. Yeah, that is the most challenging phase. I'm on the other side. I have been for a while. Peace is there. I just want you to know there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, so I gained 15 pounds in 9 months. That's kind of was my first clue. And
yes.
So how would you say that, and I was so encouraged because you said, you can do it, I did it. So is there any other detail you could provide around
yes
during that time of life?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So this is great. Okay, so what I think it's fascinating. First of all, our brain, like it is real that you gained weight as your body's hormones were freaking out. Our body's hormones affect sugar, blood sugar, and all these other things. But isn't it fascinating that I got to the bottom of my overeating, which had nothing to do with hormones, just during that phase of my life. I was really ready to make the change, and I got very honest about when I was overeating. Now, the emotional landscape, if we are an emotional eater, is more energized when we're going through menopause. Like, for real. My husband, like, God bless him, because he really was walking on eggshells with me, and I thought I was going crazy. So this is a real thing. Now, what is the first thing I went to if I wasn't feeling so hot? For me, food, right? So there is a level that, because our hormones are so off, if we are emotional eaters or have tied that and get comfort by eating food, which is biological, but some of us are doing that more than others. That is why that's one of the reasons why we gain weight during menopause. So I don't think it's bunk that there's biology going on, but our brain just enters the process along with us and says, oh, you'll feel better if you eat all of this or eating more often. So this is the way I do my work, is much more with the mindset around weight loss. So I would always say, be careful when you say I'm gaining weight because I'm going through menopause. Because every time you say that, it like lets you off the hook of like, well, it's just happening to me. We become a victim of our hormonal shift. So this is where we can take our power back and go, well, I'm going to have to pay really deep attention because I am going through menopause. That would be my first advice, is just be paying real attention and in a loving way of what your appetite is. And fuel foods, I would say in menopause, my experience was this, and I'm seeing this a lot in other women, our sensitivities and what our fuel triggers are get a little more amped up. So it may be a season where no sugar, no flour might really serve you. Like that your body is overreacting to them because the hormones are really triggering insulin a lot, and it really is a thing. And that would be where I'd start, Bridget, is really, really getting serious, that knowing that your fuels need to be even more refined because your body might be overreacting to them during that shift. All right. But always, like the mindset coach I am, we always, and this is for everybody out there, be careful of the things you say to yourself around food. It might be genetic. I'm like, I can't gut this. We start feeling helpless. I'm so busy, I can't. We let all those thoughts and beliefs create an energy state that puts us right back here. You see, like where we are the victim of the food. I was a victim of my food my whole life. And the minute I took my power back, wow, my life changed. And so I want that for everyone here on the call. There are 4 types of eating. I think describing them will be really helpful and won't take a lot more time for you. But there are 4 types of eating. And there's fuel eating, there's joy eating, there's storm eating, and fog eating. So when I start journaling with people and I'm helping them to lose weight, we will talk about the percentages that we do. And I'll just be really honest about mine right now to give you an example. So I am no longer a storm eater, but I was the high school teenager that used to go into pantries when I babysat, when the kids went to bed, and I just pounded it, and then was totally in shame. So I have this whole history of storm or binge eating. And that's like an emotional place where you're overeating, you're not eating for fuel needs, you do not feel good, and you just can't stop. And not all of us have this, but many overeaters are when we're carrying a lot of extra weight. This can be, if we can nail this and understand what's going on for us here, that's storm eating. Fog eating, I would say I'm about the 10% right now. I am really watching this. I drop wine, which is the foggiest of foods because it makes us feel foggy. It really doesn't work for me when I'm trying to lose weight, so about 10%. And then, let's see, maybe 5%. I'd like to actually change this to more, and 85% fuel. So that's just my subjective, look at it. And if I'm trying to lose weight, all I want to do is tweak it. And if I can take away this, look at what my fuel would be. I might even add 5 to joy, have very intentional joy eating, and I might put the 5% here and there. And this comes with a lot of practice, a lot of knowing why we're emotionally eating. This is where the coaching works. And I encourage anybody that's in this training, that's gotten this email, to do a strategy call with me. Everyone's earned one that shows up for one call. And Bridget just earned hers. And I know there's 5 or 6 of you on the first call, and I know you can't be on every call. So you send me an email and say, I listened to the video. I want my strategy session. And what we do is really see and unlock these patterns that cause the fog and the storm eating. And when we let go of these, then we can have more fun here. Now, joy eating. I want to describe joy eating. I know somebody's getting really stringent with themselves when they aren't doing any of this. They're on a diet, right? They're like, I can't eat any of that. Now, some need to be on no sugar, no flour to not trigger insulin. But joy eating should be practiced. At my clients, once a week, I ask them to have a joy meal or a treat, go hungry, plan it ahead, and eat very intentionally something really yummy. And this creates this new trust in ourselves that we can eat fascinating, amazing, off-diet kind of foods. And it gives we are designed for pleasure, and I believe we should be having pleasure around food. And so for me, this usually shows up like a very good steak dinner, a very expensive sushi, like when you eat it out. So treating financially, sushi is you can't overeat sushi. It's so high protein for me. It's like one of my favorite fuel foods. So I even eat fuel foods, but I make sure it's like this really treat event. Another might be, I did a Joy Eat Friday night. My husband and I were like, we both looked at each other and we're trying to cook at home more, save some money. And we both looked at each other and we were like, I want somebody to serve me dinner. And I was like, even like, I'm not on wine most nights of the week. It was very much a habitual thing. But I'm like, I'm having wine at that French restaurant. And I sat there and savored a charcuterie and liver pate. Like, think about points on this one, right? Guess what? That's all we had. That's all we needed. Oh, I had chocolate mousse for dessert. I had my full Joy experience. But you know what? The rest of the weekend, eating lean and green felt great. It wasn't a drama thing. And so intentionally eating Joy food is really good for us. So it's all about tweaking these. I've had clients that start losing weight at 65 and 70% fuel. And then as we get closer to our natural weight, sometimes we have to tweak it a little more. But this is really just looking at these patterns and deciding, really what, where we're getting into trouble with fog eating or storm eating, and creating, what thoughts are creating fog. Like for me, it's nervousness. I'll fog eat because of nervousness. I'm really, truly not doing something I intended to do in my business, and I'll go munch instead. Literally, almost every time. So that I like now when I go to the pantry, I go, what are you avoiding? And I'll go back in my office and go do it. So like how we do one thing is how we do many things. And this is one of those things. Bridget, I know your questions might help the audience because I started rambling a little bit there.
What you mentioned that I wrote this down. You talked about unlocking patterns of storm and fog eating.
Yes.
What is one of the typical patterns that you see with, say, storm?
What would be a typical pattern with storm eating?
Yes.
Okay, so you just got, your boss is really volatile. You're in an environment that is, and these are all thoughts, by the way. I do thought work all the time like that. The circumstances, you have work, but your boss just yelled at you and you are really upset. And you walk in the door and you take out the carton of ice cream and you go sit down. And you just keep shoveling it in, like, I know I wasn't going to eat sugar this week, but heck, I am all in. And you're watching yourself do it, and you don't want to be doing it, but you want to feel better. And it's a little bit of a brain pattern that our brain tricks us into believing, because of the dopamine surge of sugar and flour and kind of processed foods. Our brain will remember that felt good, even though it really didn't in the end. Like, we usually feel sick afterwards. Our brain will remember that we initially felt that dopamine, and it will want you to do that again. Like when you feel bad again. It's like, then you have another like kind of medium bad day at work and you come home and it's the same thing, bag of chips or whatever. But storm is highly emotionally charged. Fog is really eating behind your own back without even realizing it. Like the bag of the popcorn at the movies, and I'll go, I cannot believe I ate that whole thing. Like, that's fog eating. And the patterns are that I'm going to lose my job. Like this would be a simple thing on that example. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to get fired. He's so angry with me. I hate him. I hate this environment. You do not have to believe that you're going to lose your job just because your boss yelled at you. But when you believe that, it creates a huge anxiety. And it's changing some of those thought patterns around that we immediately go to the darkest place with our brain when we have an event happen. And that's the coaching I do, is unlocking some of these patterns that are really, I have, like another example is a fog eating, but unlocking these patterns comes from realizing what you think in the moment that creates the emotional energy that then you see the action is always responding with food. And I'll be explaining my thought model in a little bit. That's a little too much for this lesson. But it is like fog eating. I had a client that, he goes, I know I'm going home for dinner. I am a little hungry, but I know I can wait. It's not a big deal. And every time he commuted home, he would stop to get gas or stop at the like drive-through or stop at a Quick Trip, and always would just get something. And what it boiled down to is very sneaky thought. It took us really only one conversation. And it was that I'm bored. I need to be doing something. I can't stand being bored. Like it really was uncomfortable for him to be bored. So doing something with his hands and eating felt better. And we talked about it and I go, no, wait. Like the brain just has made this pattern for him and he was going to white knuckle not eating on the way home. And it does take some practice to break these patterns. Like you have to say no to it and know what's going on. And what we realized in this conversation, I said, no, wait, okay, what's another way to think about your ride home? Why are you bored? Why aren't you listening to podcasts? Why aren't you listening to your favorite radio show? Why aren't you calling your best friend in Chicago? Why aren't you calling your wife and planning the evening? Why aren't you, why, there's so many other options for you on driving home. Why aren't you doing that? So really paying attention to what the thought is, it's backtracking. How do I feel when I normally overeat? What is the thought that's creating that and interrupting that thought pattern? And it's a neuron pathway. That's why we feel like it's genetic. It happens without our thinking, without us consciously thinking about it. It's now in our subconscious. Bridget, does that answer it? How the patterns work?
Yes, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. And there's very common emotions that create fog eating. Most of them are boredom, a little anxiety. Like for me, it's usually a little anxiety. Loneliness can start fog eating. And we can even be eating in fuel and then check out and then fog eat, overeat. Or we can be in joy and then we can't stop when we're full and it becomes fog eating. But knowing these 4 different kinds and being very curious about them and not judgmental, like I'm not fuel eating. Like I no longer judge myself around food. I really don't. My harshness, I almost started getting injuries working out because I was beating it off with exercise. I've gotten in a very, mindset-wise, very confident, calm place around food. But there are things to always unlock. There's always something there. All right. I hope that's enough. That's so much. I hope I didn't overwhelm you.
No, not at all.
Okay. Thanks for being such a great student. I will send you in the show notes, that podcast. And if you're not listening to my podcast, why not? So I'm covering all these issues in a series right now. It's just starting. I think part 2 came out this week. I'm way ahead in recording. Yay me! I'm 2 weeks ahead. And those are coming out in succession. And it's going to be exactly what this training is, but even going deeper. I'm breaking up the episodes in very small pieces. So if you want to learn my tools, dig in to the podcast. But in the notes or the email, I'll follow up with the recording. I'm going to be sending you a link to a 30-minute session that you are more than welcome to take me up on, even more than once. If you're in this training the next 2 weeks, I want you taking me up on this and really learning what you really need to kind of create the weight loss for you. Everybody's a little different. And if we end up working together, all the better. This is an amazing investment. Coaching has changed my entire life. I love every hour I've invested in coaching. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So don't be bashful if this is something you're thinking about. All right. Thanks, Bridget, for showing up.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sorry you don't have a webcam, but I remember you from that day. Believe me, I do remember a conversation, and I was a little sad that I didn't have your card, and look how the universe works. Here you are.
Well, I took your podcast card, so.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And sharing is caring, everybody out there. If you love the podcast, love the training, people can opt in now and be a part of this, because I really want to start creating a really fun community around being badass warriors around wellness.
Thank you.
All right, Bridget, thank you. I'm going to sign off. My calls are always longer than I intend. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Let's thank Bridget for showing up. So I had somebody to have ask the questions that I know you're wanting to ask. Thanks so much, dear. All right. Bye, everybody.